Right now, we're shifting into the next evolution of the internet, which is known as Web3. And while many people have a basic understanding of blockchain and crypto at large, there is still a lot to unpack surrounding the topic. To help explain Web3 to us, we're joined by Head of Blockchain Launch and Onyx Digital Assets, Tyron Lobban. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Jackie.
Tyron, let's first start with an overview of Web3. How do you see the shift from Web 2 to Web 3 happening, and how could that impact the current Web 2 landscape?
Well, Web 3 is really the next iteration of the World Wide Web as we know it today. The first iteration was really centered around this idea that in the early days of the internet, all we could really do was read online what we were actually being shown. There was not really an interactive model. It was very much we are consumers of the information that we're being presented with. This shifted in the early 2000s, and this is where we refer to Web 2, where we actually moved to a much more interactive web. There was an explosion of social media, web apps were created. All of a sudden, we could create content, and we could put content out there into the world. But the challenge with Web 2 is ultimately that we are not the owners of the platforms that we are using to create this content. If you think about you building up a brand on your favorite social media platform, and then wanting to move to another platform, it's very difficult for you to take your community that you've curated with you. This is where Web3 comes in. Web3 is about the shift from creating content to owning content. But more importantly than that, it's also about owning the platforms that you are using to create your online value. The entire model around Web3 centers on ownership, and this is underpinned by digital assets enabled by blockchain technology. And here we're seeing a huge shift towards better models for even owning things like your digital identity. We see the shift from Web 2 to Web 3 really happening on three vectors. One is around infrastructure and assets. Here we see a shift from centralized closed ecosystems to open source, decentralized blockchain platforms. And with that, a huge explosion of digital assets that can be created. Second is around payments. Again, moving from these closed ecosystems where payments are largely account-based to a token-based model where assets and value can move together and peer-to-peer in a much simpler fashion. And finally, people. We see people actually demanding the ability to own their online digital assets and their online digital identity as opposed to being renters of the value that they're creating online.
Now, digital assets are a huge component of Web3. What are the main types of digital assets and key considerations for each, and where does this concept of wallets fit into the picture?
So digital assets is this really broad term, but really it's anything that is represented and transferred over a blockchain. We actually think about breaking digital assets into four categories. First is cryptocurrencies. This is Bitcoin and Ether, assets that are native to a given blockchain protocol. Then we have payments tokens like stablecoins and central bank digital currencies that really enable the faster, more seamless movement of money over blockchain. Third, we have traditional assets, which are tokenized securities, and bringing those onto blockchain. Think about stocks, bonds, even real estate. And finally, native tokens, NFTs, governance tokens, even digital securities that you're creating and representing on blockchain. But all of these digital assets are ultimately enabled by digital wallets. Digital wallets become the gateway and access point into this universe of Web3. They will be the tool that you will use to prove ownership of assets and the way that you ensure that you are in control of your online digital identity.
So if we compare the shift towards a decentralized internet to the internet boom in the 90s, where is the shift towards Web3 in terms of maturity and adoption?
We're actually already seeing some notable adoption. If you think about large tech companies that are getting involved in the space, we have someone like Meta who has recently enabled people on Instagram to actually access NFTs. We also have large global brands like Nike who have recently acquired an NFT company that allows for you to create NFTs of Nike sneakers in the metaverse. And from a venture capital perspective, venture capitalists have actually invested almost $18 billion just in the first half of 2022 alone. So we're definitely seeing the strides towards adoption, but we're still early. We have to have clarity from a regulatory perspective in terms of how digital assets will be classified. And we definitely need to improve the user experience, both in terms of how people can actually access their digital assets, but also participate in these new platforms.
To wrap up, you lead the firm's product development for blockchain-based solutions with the Onyx organization. What is Onyx, and how is the firm thinking about its Web3 strategy and specific initiatives?
So Onyx is JPMorgan's blockchain-based business unit. Within Onyx, we focus on building new applications, new infrastructure, and new solutions leveraging blockchain technology. And we've actually launched 3 networks in production. Our Link network, which is focused on information exchange, our JPMorgan Coin Systems network, which is focused on value transfer, and finally, our Onyx Digital Assets platform, which is focused on the tokenization of traditional assets. And from a Web3 perspective, we're actually very focused on identifying new opportunities and creating solutions that may be necessary for us as a firm to offer over the next 3 to 5 years. So here we're looking at everything from NFTs to digital identity and digital wallets, even to the metaverse, where we've created a platform in a prominent metaverse to really demonstrate how we are at the forefront of this technology. Ultimately, Onyx is already providing value to JPMorgan and its clients, and we're here to ensure that we're at the forefront of Web3.
Head of Blockchain Launch and Onyx Digital Assets, Tyron Lobin, thank you so much for explaining all of that to us and for being here today.
Thank you, Jackie.